right, friends, welcome to another episode of Healedish, and today is going to be such a great episode. I have Mattie Mae Motl here, who I found on TikTok and Instagram, and I am just absolutely obsessed with her work. She is a Bible scholar.
I guess so.
Very excited to have you.
The people in my comments would disagree with you.
Oh, I've seen you do some amazing clapbacks to people who think that they're really doing something in their videos, but you know your stuff, so.
Yeah, I sure do. Yeah, I'm just so excited to be here. I love you and all of your content too, so this is so cool.
Much. Well, I was hoping we could just get started by talking about what type of religious system you were raised in and what your experiences like were in the church growing up.
Yeah. So I grew up in the good old Southern Baptist Church. Ever heard of it?
Once or twice.
Yeah. So I, my family and I, lived in South Arkansas. Belt buckle of the Bible Belt, if you will. We went to the First Baptist Church in town. And we moved a lot when I was a kid, but we finally settled in South Arkansas when I was around 10. My dad was working at a Baptist university and teaching Bible at a Baptist university and was a pastor at First Baptist. And so we landed there when I was like 10 years old. And yeah, I got to know very quickly my place in the church. But I also pushed back wherever I could. One of my favorite stories is so the only woman's name that I grew up hearing from the pulpit. No women were ever preached or anything like that. Unless there was no woman was behind the pulpit unless there was a children's ministry segment where the children's pastor was children's leader, not pastor.
Ooh, can't say pastor.
No, I cannot say pastor. Was please volunteer. We need more volunteers. So it's either that or if there was a music special segment, so a woman had a solo. But the only name I grew up hearing behind the pulpit was Lottie Moon. Have you heard of her?
No, I haven't. Who is that?
So Lottie Moon was an 18th century missionary, and she is famous in the Baptist church. She was a missionary in China, I think. And she was kind of a badass, actually. But there's an offering taken up in her name every year in Southern Baptist churches. And so
I was all Baptist churches?
Not all Baptist. I don't know about Baptist, but Southern Baptist for sure. Because I know that there are some important differences there. A lot of my Baptist friends were but I was not Southern Baptist, and that's very important to them. And so, yeah, I heard the story of Lottie Moon, and I thought she was so awesome that I wrote a monologue from her perspective, and performed it for my entire church to teach them about who Lottie Moon was and what she did. She was really cool. She was a single woman who left her fiance, left her college, her mother and everything, moved to China and just was single her whole life. And she took no shit from the Southern Baptist Church either. She has some really angry letters to the mission board. And yeah, she's awesome. I don't know how she got her name on a really big offering. Well, I do know how. They don't tell her story. That it's just her name that's told. But anyway,
what does the money go to? Just the church? It's just
missions.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So, it goes to missions. It's taken every Christmas, I think. So I think that shows sort of, I felt the boundaries that were given to me from a young age. And also from a young age, I was like, how can I shatter these into pieces? But a lot of like most of my negative experiences had to do with purity culture. Like, I mean, I went to camps where, you know, spaghetti straps were illegal, basically.
The worst possible things in the world.
Yeah,
If you see a bra strap.
yeah. Okay, so you're in Texas, so you know, like in the summer when you're a little girl,
Hot.
it is actually unbearable and unlivable. And so, like, spaghetti straps were just basic survival. And so, yeah, one time I got turned away from a worship service. I was like 11 years old for wearing spaghetti straps. An old man was the one who reprimanded me and
You were
told
a
me to go
baby.
back. Yeah. And they always are. Like, these are children that they're sexualizing.
And it's weird that you're thinking about that. You know, I've heard so many stories where it's like these 5-year-olds are getting in trouble in kindergarten for wearing a spaghetti strap. And I would like to know more about why that bothers you so much.
Yes, exactly. So very creepy things like that. Yeah, you know, the Southern Baptist Church is just a good piece of work.
Yeah. Were you told any of the purity culture demonstrations, or do you remember if there was a specific purity culture night that you guys had?
So, I was homeschooled, so that adds a whole other um sprinkling of trauma. But so my sex education was at home. And our church, I don't think ever did any sort of sex ed other than like, you know, the like sermon that's like, hey, don't be a slut kind of message.
Yeah.
But my mother and I did Passport to Purity. And have you heard of this?
Okay, I have heard of this, but I could be wrong, but I don't think I've actually had anybody on who did this. So can you please explain? Because I have like this rough idea, but I feel like this is legendary.
This is like, I'm going to have to like tap back into some memories that I've suppressed. So there are tapes that you listen to, along with your parent, of course. And there's like a curriculum. And they like tell you basically different activities that you can do with your child to demonstrate the fact that sex is, you know, life altering, and you will get pregnant and die if you have sex before marriage. And so we did some activities from that. One of them, the one that stuck with me the most, we did several, but the one that stuck with me the most was a balloon. So once you poke a hole in the balloon, it's deflated.
That one's especially depressing. I've actually never heard that one before.
Yeah, that's why it stuck with me. I was like, okay, cool. Just a shriveled balloon for the rest of my life.
That no one would ever want.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what? You want a gross shriveled up balloon? No. And the other like activity that really stuck with me was there was this diagram like in the workbook that you had to fill out, and it was a cliff. So it's like a drawing of a cliff, and you like you have to like write out different things that you would be willing to do before marriage. And like sex is the cliff. Like sex is the thing that you like when you drop off the cliff and die. And so like I made a commitment to not kiss my husband until we were married. That lasted a couple years.
Oh my gosh. What did you feel like that was put on you by the church, or was that you just wanted to follow the rules and you made that boundary for yourself?
No, I think it was put on me for sure.
Yeah.
I think part of it was I was a really good student. And so I was able to, from a young age, I'm the eldest daughter of 5. And so from a young age, I could tell what adults wanted from me and I could give that to them. And so I felt very much in that moment, I know what would be the right answer here. Like, I know how to get an A+ on this assignment. And so, I mean, obviously I like didn't feel super strongly about it because I broke that covenant.
Well, you kept it for a couple years. That's a long time.
Well, I was like, how old was I? I was like 13 when I did this, and my first kiss was like 14, 15. So like, I just waited until I had someone to kiss. was the thing.
Got it.
But yeah, I got a purity ring at the end as like a
symbol
passed.
Of the course finishing.
Yeah, yep. As a part of that, we also read I Kissed Dating Goodbye.
The Holy Grail of purity culture. I remember that was such a, like, it took my youth group by storm, and it was kind of this morality check of how serious are we? Like, really, guys, are we serious about God and our purity? And there definitely were people that dated, and it wasn't necessarily frowned upon. I mean, we did have couples who were dating, and it was fine. But I do feel like the people who read that book and took it very seriously, we were like, oh, you're like amazing. You're a really, really good Christian, and we should all be like you, you know?
So I'm just looking up. Have you heard of the book Captivating by John and Stacey Eldridge? I had 3 copies.
Well, what was this book about? Isn't it the girly version of the Wild at Heart books?
Yes. Yeah, it's the version for the girls, and it's just basically like, how can you submit to God's great captivating love? And it's, just it's written, I remember it. I haven't read it since middle school when I read it 3 million times. But it's written very like sensually. It's like God just like loves you and like pursues you, and you just have to like submit to God, and you just, like that,
it's like very romantic undertone.
Yeah. Yes. It's like very saccharine. It's very like, yes, God just like wants to date me, and like God is my boyfriend, and that just sort of like that it was just weird. Like all of this stuff was just weird. And yeah, I have the unique experience of actually getting married to the guy that I went through all this purity culture shit with. So my husband and I met when we were 10, started dating when we were 13, and now we're married. And so like, it's the first time I ever kissed my husband. I told my mom months after the fact because I knew it was going to be a big thing. And the first thing my mom said to me was, I don't know what I was expecting, but like I was hoping for like oh my gosh, like you had your first kiss, like sort of like moment with my mom. But she just said, well, how does it feel that you've kissed somebody who you may not marry?
Ooh, like, the trauma. Oh, gosh.
And since I Kissed Dating Goodbye was all the rage, my poor husband, he like didn't come from a super religious family, and so he had to go through all of this through my family. Like he really wanted me. Like
he said, we have to do this.
Yeah, he worked hard. Okay, he earned this. But he asked my dad's permission to date me.
Okay, so how old were you guys? So you said, were you 13 when? So as a 13-year-old, he went and asked your dad.
He asked my dad because it's it's all super patriarchal, and
respect.
And again, like I Kissed Dating Goodbye, like this idea of like courting to marry, like there wasn't like boyfriend, girlfriend, like chill times. It was like, no, like this person that you date will be the person that you marry.
Mm-hmm.
And that just happened to be the case for us. But for a lot of people who are 13, obviously that is not the case. But my dad was like, well, here's what you have to understand. Like, if I were a man and I just got a new Ferrari, I wouldn't let you just drive that car. I would like let you test drive it. And like, so this whole time he's giving this whole long story
like
about
you're a car.
And I was the car in the situation, and it was different men who were being allowed to drive me. And so, yeah, it's just weird.
It's very weird and patriarchal. And my ex, I mean, I was 20 when we started dating. He reached out to my dad and asked if he could date me. And my ex, he was gross, but he was 30 years old. And he reached out to my dad and asked if he could date me, which is so gross.
Yeah.
And what's so funny is I was more religious okay, that's not true. My dad is very religious, but I was wanting to be a missionary, and this was like my whole life. So
Yeah.
even my dad was like, this is a bit much. Like, why is this 30-year-old man calling me and asking if he can take my adult daughter on a date? Like, this is so weird. And he was like, sure. How about it?
Yeah. It's so normalized, like in the, like, at least where I, like my background, like it was so normalized that it was like, yeah, sure, but
and you're taught that it's romantic too. I feel like from the captivating books and stuff like that.
Exactly.
It's like,
oh, he's pursuing me. Like my dad is letting me, date this boy or whatever. Can we talk about the fact that you wanted to be a missionary though? Because I also wanted to be a missionary.
Who didn't?
And I feel like
after those youth group nights.
See, I feel like there's several things that I want to talk about this. But first of all, I feel like a lot of women want to be missionaries because they just want independence. Like it's the only option for them to just like be free from everything. So I think and it's the only sort of women that we grew up that we could look up to, because we didn't talk about the Bible, like women in the Bible. Women weren't pastors. But women were missionaries, at least in my experience. And so it was like, oh, like that is something I can aspire to be. And there's a certain like freedom and liberation associated with being a missionary. Like I can get out, I can travel, I can experience the world, I can, have more like experiences. I don't know. What do you think about, like, why do you think you wanted to be a missionary?
Oh my gosh. I'm like actively thinking right now that you may have just unlocked something because I've never really thought about it. It felt kind of like a given. But now that I look back at my motives, I mean, I was 17 years old, went to this Heidi Baker conference. And like when you look at Heidi Baker, do you know who she is?
Yes.
She is the head of Iris Ministry. She is the head of everything. And like her husband's like kind of to the side, so I think seeing this woman live out this dream and be so powerful, I mean, it's true. I never would have ever thought I want to be a pastor, because you kind of know that that's not going to happen, or you're going to end up being a youth pastor's wife. And I am a very ambitious person, and I did like to travel, and I wanted to speak. I think that was something that I always wanted to do, was to be a speaker and give talks. So in my mind, oh my gosh, I can be a missionary. And I did crave that way more than the idea of like being a pastor's wife.
Yeah, because you couldn't, Yeah, because in that case, you wouldn't be able to teach. You wouldn't be able to like travel. You'd be trapped. You'd be, and
secondary.
Exactly. But it's so interesting how in these conservative, I mean, it's not interesting. It's racist. Like, like women can go and like preach to brown people because brown people are like less than. So it's not interesting. It's just blatantly racist. But I do find with a lot of women who have deconstructed, they wanted to be missionaries because, one, it's like the highest ranking thing that you can go for as a woman.
Yeah.
And like you can get out. Like it's like your ticket out that's like sanctimonious and like approved of by the church.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel as oppressive, I
Yeah.
guess. Because you've seen what it's like to be a woman. I mean, like growing up in the church, I saw same thing. I wasn't Southern Baptist, but the women are the ones taking care of the kids, or they work in music and they do the tithing announcements. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much all they do.
Yeah.
And they minister to other women. That's pretty much it. And I know in some Baptists, right, they like a woman can't even teach the youth. I've heard in some. There was someone I had on who said that.
Oh, yeah.
She
that
couldn't
was
even
the case.
teach in the youth because
Yeah.
they're still kind of under, or they're not as good as the youth boys. Like we should have a man be teaching the youth boys.
Yeah. I was called to ministry. Did you have a call to ministry moment?
Oh, with the Heidi Baker conference, I was like,
yes.
this is it. This is it.
I hear the voice of God. Yes.
It's like, this is going to be my life now.
It's like a call to ministry. You're like, I want to speak in front of people. Like, that's it.
Oh, absolutely. What was your call to ministry?
So at a camp, of course, cry night of a camp. And yes, God spoke to me. And, I do feel some, I want to give the younger version of myself some more grace. And because I do think, I don't know, talking about like religious experiences in retrospect is hard for me because I want to validate what she went through. And so like, and hold that intention with what I feel like and know now. But so I won't go into that, but, I had an experience as told though is called to ministry. And, so then my options were children's ministry, women's ministry, or youth ministry. Women's ministry sounded awful to me. I hated like women's conferences where you like would go and like make a flower crown, or I just did not feel like I fit into like women ministry core. It always felt like I always just felt like this, and this is internalized misogyny. Okay, I'm gonna name it. But like I was like, I want to be at the big kids table. Like, why can't I be in the room where they're like talking about like actual theology and we're not reading Ruth for the 13th time in a row?
The few stories that women are in. And when I was at Bethel, the only women's conference I ever attended was at Bethel. And it's because, funny enough, I responded to a Facebook post that was asking for people to volunteer to do a photo shoot for this conference. So it was called the Lovely Conference, because of course it was. Yes. And I should make a video about it. I can probably find a picture of me like skipping through a field for a photo shoot. Like, it's so cringy.
Field for Jesus.
I think my hair was like bright red at the time. I went through this phase where I dyed my hair bright red, and I was like skipping through a field with like 5-year-olds and 70-year-olds, and it was like all the seasons of being a woman, and I was like one of the only like young people there.
That is hilarious.
And that is the only women's conference I ever attended. But I like sat front row with Benny Johnson, and oh my gosh,
yeah.
But yeah. So that was not my vibe either. So it was
or youth ministry. Children's ministry. Kids are fine, but I again was sort of like, can I talk about real stuff? More. Yeah, like that was a big thing for me. Like I was like already reading like theology and biblical studies books, like because I was interested in that. And so I was like, it's just not going to do it for me. And so youth ministry is where I landed because I was like, that's as close as you can get. But then it was so interesting. I went to a Baptist university and I had female professors. And I was like, that is what I want to do because that's where women can teach.
Wow. Yeah.
And
actually teach.
yeah. But that's so backwards. Like it's interesting that a Baptist university, a Southern Baptist university, would allow women to teach at the college level.
Maybe teaching is considered feminine, though.
Yeah, maybe. But why is... Yeah, but not with Bible or theology.
Yeah, that's true. Interesting.
I don't know. It just felt so backwards, but it felt like my loophole out. Where I was like, oh, like I can like actually teach full grown adults as a woman. And so as soon as I went to college, which was like a year later, and had a professor who was a woman who was very pastoral in the way that she taught, just in the way that she connected with people and asked good questions. And yeah, like I just really connected to her. And I was like, this is a ministry. And she happened to be an English lit teacher. And so that semester I changed my major from Christian studies after asking a question about abortion in class.
How did that go?
Not well. One time I got so frustrated in one of my biblical studies classes in undergrad that I was like, explain it to me like I'm an atheist. Because they kept saying, well, you know, God only knows. And I was like, okay, let's remove God from the equation. If you can't use God as a trump card, what is your answer to this? And yeah, I wasn't satisfied with any of the answers to, and I was made to feel like my hard questions were uncomfortable and unwelcome. But in the English department, they were welcomed and encouraged. And so, like a lot of people who go to conservative schools, found the sanctuary of the English department and just made a home there. And I'm really grateful for that. But it was really interesting because it was the first time where I saw a woman teaching and felt really empowered. And that's why I'm getting my PhD.
Why do you think it was that the English department was so much better with the questions? Because this was still at the conservative university.
Yeah. I think just most people who read
education, no, like well-versed people.
Canceled.
No.
Yeah, like the more that you read, the more liberal you are. I don't know. Don't come after me. That's just, there's an interesting correlation there.
Honestly, yeah. When I was, what was it, 2016 or 17, I got on a really big audiobook streak. I love listening to audiobooks.
Me
and
too.
This is while I was in my domestic violence marriage with Ted. And oh my gosh, and also I had fibromyalgia and he didn't really want me to work. So I had all of this time on my hands. I was like puzzling every day at the table, doing puzzles and just listening to audiobooks all day. And I listened to, I think one year I listened to 150 books in a year. And
that's so cool.
My beliefs changed very quickly. And it wasn't even that I was reading theological books, just reading memoirs, reading Cheryl Strayed, like just lots of different books really opened my eyes.
That's it. I think I'm one of the things that like a lot of people ask me, you know, like, what are your book recommendations as a Bible scholar? And like, most of the time, I just find myself begging them to go read a good work of fiction. I'm like, if you can appreciate a novel and the truth that fiction can tell you, then that is gonna help you. That's gonna help shape you and help you understand how to read and approach the Bible, because the Bible, a lot of it is fiction.
How dare you say that as a Bible scholar? How could you say that?
A lot of it is made up. And so, but if you read fiction and if you love fiction and if you believe in the power of a story and the truth that a story communicates, then that's not an issue for you. Your faith can handle the fact that Adam and Eve may not have been real people. Like, oh, you know, but instead say, well, I think that the author through this poem is communicating something about the sort of God that Adonai is. And, you know, so I think that I really think that if more Christians read fiction, then it would solve a lot of our problems. That would be like if I were president of the world, like I would
must read fiction.
Everyone. Yeah. I'm like, read a good novel or not even a good novel. Like pick up Twilight or, you know, like whatever.
Hey, I reread Twilight every year in a non-funny way. I enjoy Twilight.
I am a fan of the movies. Okay. I will say that. I've never read the books. But maybe you could convince me.
It's a ride for sure.
I believe you, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like going back to the fiction thing, I feel like a lot of my first thoughts of deconstruction, I mean, this started in high school. I started to feel a little uncomfortable with, you know, the story of Adam and Eve. I would think, okay, I feel like what was it? I took a mythology course.
Yeah.
Okay. Took a mythology course in high school with my friend, and we were learning about Pandora's box and everything. And I was sitting there thinking, wow, it feels like Adam and Eve is another way to explain a similar sentiment, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that made me so uncomfortable. And I was like, shove down, don't think about that.
Yeah.
Tower of Babel, that was another one that really upset me growing up because it felt very, taking a mythology course, it reminded me so much of, here's a story to explain this thing. You know, here's why we all speak different languages. And the discomfort in being raised in a place where I was told that these aren't, like, none of it is fiction at all. This is 100% true and it's perfect. You know, that was hard for me to reconcile in my brain.
And, you know, it's really, and it's just fascinating how, like, if we just trusted kids a little bit more with, like, because kids know the power of a story. Like, you don't have to, like, tell them, like, what makes a story important. So if you just trusted a kid and said, like, we don't know if this actually happened, but we do know that this is trying to communicate. I mean, think about, like, Aesop's Fables. Like, we grew up reading, like, Aesop's Fables where, like, this is a fiction story that communicates something that's really true. And that is a very easy way to just also talk about the Bible, because that's what it is. A lot of it, most of it, like 90% of it. So yeah, I think more Christians should read fiction. That's my
love that
hot take.
Good homework. I love listening to audiobooks. When would you say was the first time that you maybe started to realize that you thought that the Bible wasn't perfect? Because was that something taught to you growing up, that it's perfect, and not only perfect, but it's all factual and true?
That's a good question. Yeah. I remember a specific moment that made it, I was like comfortable with the idea of, like, Adam and Eve. By this point, like, I'd studied the Bible, so I was like, okay, like, Adam and Eve is a myth, like, that's fine, you know, like, so there were some things that I learned that you learned even in the most conservative biblical studies classes in my, like, experience. So, you know, they often lay out, well, like, some people think that this is, like, a rewritten Canaanite myth, you know, whatever. And so I'd come to terms with that. But then I learned that there is no archaeological evidence for the Exodus.
Yes, please explain, because I'm sure some people have never looked into it. So feel free to educate us as much as you want to.
So if you don't know, the Exodus, think the Prince of Egypt movie. If you haven't seen that movie, stop listening to this and go watch that immediately.
The music still slaps.
They did not have to go that hard. But so it's the story of the Israelite nation in slavery in Egypt. And it supposedly happened for hundreds of years, that this whole people group was enslaved by Egypt. And there's a whole story that goes along with how Pharaoh let the Israelite people go. Moses is the big guy who did that. And so, yeah, he split the seas. This entire nation left Egypt. And why it feels significant to what felt really significant to me about specifically the Exodus is that is a whole lot of people living in Egypt, where we have a whole lot of archaeological history and artifacts. Egypt's one of the best places to be if you want historical evidence of just existence. And we have nothing. If it's a whole group of people who were enslaved for hundreds of years in Egypt, we don't have a single piece of evidence that an Israelite person was enslaved in Egypt at that time.
Yeah.
And so that felt huge to me, mostly because it's referenced throughout Scripture as historical, as something that actually happened, and something that's really important that it did happen.
That it all ties back to this.
Yeah. It's something that even throughout the New Testament, even throughout, other Second Temple literature, it's so important that happened. And there are different explanations for it. It could be that it was actually a much smaller group of people than we thought. You could go through all sorts of explanations for that. But that was the first moment where I was like, I'm going to have to figure out a way to be comfortable reading the Bible, knowing that maybe all of this is made up. And I feel like I am now. Obviously, I mean, it's my job to study the Bible. I am, despite the people in my comment section, for some reason, still a practicing Christian, and still have some sort of faith, whatever you call it. And the fact that the Bible is mostly made up is okay with me now. But that was the biggest thing for me, where I was like, oh, fuck.
I'm uncomfortable.
That's a big one. Yeah, that's a big one. So that was probably the moment for me where it's like, how am I going to be okay with this?
Were you taught that at the conservative school? Or was that when you were getting your graduate?
No, it was the summer after I graduated from it was in between. So it was, I think I remember it being 2020, world's shut down, a lot of time to think. All of us were deconstructing. And I don't remember how I found it out, actually. I think I was reading a book, and I heard that for the first time, and I did research and was and I think that was too what was really important to me, is that nobody had ever told me that. I was like, this feels like a big thing, guys. Why are we
important?
Yeah. And so I think that was the first time where I started to think back on my education as well, with a more critical eye of what have I not been told? And so I had to do a lot of relearning with that. But yeah, that was a big one. That was a doozy for me. And that probably, I same with you, for me, I don't think there's ever a beginning or end to deconstruction. It's something that I just sort of have always lived alongside, and I'm comfortable living alongside for the rest of my life. I don't think my faith will if I'm doing it right, my faith will never look the same, ever. I'll always be asking critical questions about what I believe and how that affects the person that I love. But as far as like deconstructing like Southern Baptist evangelical thoughts, like that piece of knowledge really jump-started a lot for me.
So during that time, did you start to tell anybody these revelations that you were having, that maybe everything wasn't 100% factual?
Yeah, I was telling everybody. I was the kid. Okay, so we didn't do Santa growing up. We were like the too holy for Santa crowd. And so but I was the kid who told everybody that Santa wasn't real.
Mattie, no, you're not supposed to do that.
But I feel like I just have this knowledge and I'm like, guys, like they're lying to us. And so
you always cared about the truth.
Yeah. And so, yes, I told everyone that the Exodus was fake as well. Santa and the Exodus, like they're lying to us. It's a big
They're both pivotal things to learn.
So, yeah, I told everyone and I talked to everyone about it. And I mean, the people who were in my life who loved me were used to me stirring the pot and asking hard questions. So I don't think it came as a huge surprise. But my husband and I really deconstructed at the same time. And so he was like my main conversation partner, where it was just back and forth all throughout 2020 of like, what is going on? What do we actually believe? And yeah, he got the brunt of it. And he was deconstructing at the same time as me, so it worked out.
Well, you said that he wasn't raised in a super religious household, but did he become very religious with you during that time?
Well, no, he didn't, but he was trying really hard to be, because that's what I felt like I needed.
Yeah.
And so I think the way that he would talk about it is that like my family and I had like expectations of what he should be, and he was trying to meet those expectations because he loved me. And so, you know, like when he started to deconstruct, it wasn't like, for a lot of people who deconstruct alongside their partner, it feels very hard because faith is like a huge thing that they connected over. And so like that becomes like a huge pillar of your relationship that you lose. But for us, like, we didn't ever really have that pillar to begin with. We were pretending that pillar was there, and we put a lot of energy in pretending like we could be a good Christian couple. But then when it crumbled, we were like, it was never there to begin with. Like, it wasn't it just wasn't something that it wasn't a load-bearing wall for us. Like, it was just sort of like, oh, like, we broke down the wall. Now we have like an open floor plan. This is so much better. And so I think that was sort of, for us, just sort of like a relief to just let go of the pretend game that we were both playing. And we pretended a lot, so we didn't talk about it with each other either, because we were like pretending so hard. And so when it finally became something that we could talk about, like, I don't know what's going on. Oh, you don't either? Oh, thank God. Like,
because I was so scared. I feel like there's a lot of fear in deconstruction, especially when you're married. I've gotten... I have an advice column podcast with my best friend, Mackenzie, and that's like the number one question that we get from people is, I'm so scared. I feel like I'm deconstructing and my partner isn't, or vice versa. You know, like my partner's deconstructing and I'm not really ready to go there. And do you think it's possible for people to stay together? So I was hoping that you could, I don't know, just explain kind of how you guys have landed differently. I know you've said in the past that you guys have landed differently, and how you've navigated that.
Yeah, sure. So the way that I explain it is that we both deconstructed and we landed on different sides of the same coin. So he and I believe all of the same things. except for the fact that I believe there's a God and he believes that there's not. So we have all of the same values, all of the same core beliefs, and like that humanity is good and worth fighting for, and that people deserve rights and safety and connection and those sorts of things that I think a lot of Christians don't realize, that you don't have to believe in God to believe that those are true. And so I think a lot of people think that like morality is tied to faith, like spirituality.
Absolutely. Like you can't have goodness without this Christian framework.
Exactly. And that's just not the case. It's certainly, I mean, like my partner is like one of the best people that I know, and he doesn't believe in a God. And so there's this really good story of an anglerfish that, and it's like, like scientists are observing this anglerfish, and those are the fish with like the light bulb in front of
Finding
their head,
Nemo.
like in Finding Nemo, exactly. And in its dying moment, this anglerfish, who they're supposed to be like on like in the deepest depths of the ocean because just of like how their biology works. But these scientists noticed that this one anglerfish, and it knew that it was dying and swam to the surface to see the sun. And like that story, I was just sort of like my husband and I were both reflecting on like how beautiful it is. And I was like, don't you think like that there must be a God, like for me, like that's so like spiritual and beautiful. And like, there's just like this goodness that's in everything, and everything is like seeking this beauty. And he was like, but think about how beautiful it is, even if there isn't a God. And, just thinking about like how that the world is just so random and it's so poetic, and we create meaning. And so like both of us were able to find so much joy and hope in this story, but just from slightly different perspectives.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people who find a lot of fear in the deconstructing with or without your partner, I think that's because of the lie that the church gave them, that like you have to put God first in a relationship.
That is the number one focus, and that if you don't, then it's all no. But I feel like that is what the church has told us, is that you have to put God first if you want to have a successful marriage. And I feel like even that would break my brain a little bit in high school, because I would see gay couples who weren't Christians, and I saw them living happy lives. But then while I am sitting in the pews of church, I'm being told that everybody who is not living the way that we're supposed to live is experiencing fake happiness. So you're looking around at all of these people and you're thinking, are you guys faking it? Are you deeply unhappy? And if you don't have God at the very top of your marriage, can you even, I don't know, have a livable, enjoyable life at all?
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think what made it so easy for us is God was never the top of our marriage. Like, we pretended he was, for sure. But
feel
then,
aligned.
Yeah. But like you see that like Doug Wilson, like umbrella, what's it called? Like diagram, where it's like God, then husband, then wife, then children, then dog, then, but yeah, I think that like the way that you love God is through loving other people. And so I think God would want me to choose him first. And so like, I think that the lie is that you like can't be friends with your partner either. That you have to have this head of the household submissive wife, that you can't be friends, you can't be buddies. You have to have these strict roles, and that's the only way that a partnership will work. And then when those roles start to dissolve, or you start to question those roles because you should, then it becomes really scary. But like always my piece of advice for people who are like deconstructing with or without a partner is just ask them like, how are you being their friend right now? Like, how would you go through this with a friend? Like,
that is so good.
Yeah, like, just be
Yeah.
their buddy. Like, hang out, like, play a video game, do whatever you like to connect with your partner, and just be friends, and all the rest of it will fall into place, and it won't matter. It won't matter if you, I mean, it shouldn't. If you We're friends with people all the time who don't believe the same thing as us. Like, the same should go for marriage. And so I think that's the advice that I tend to give. And yeah, I mean, just like let yourself love the other person and have a good time and relax a little bit. Like, I think it's okay to, like, I mean, a lot of that goes with like deconstruction of like fear around hell, which I don't believe in hell. I don't believe there's any biblical basis for hell. And so I am not afraid that I'm going to heaven and my partner is going to hell.
Yes. That was actually, you totally skipped to what my next thing was going to be.
Yeah.
It was, I think that the reason, and I loved your advice on just treating them as a friend, because I do think that there's so much fear that people have that it can take you out of just being for them, being there for them as a person and a partner and a friend. And you start to think like, how does this affect me and our life and our eternity, and a lot of that goes to the hell topic, because if you feel like your partner is going to hell, well, yeah, that's pretty hard for you to chill out if you think that your partner is going to suffer eternally. So could you break down for anybody who has a little bit of stress around the idea of hell, why you don't believe in hell as a biblical scholar?
Sure. Yeah. So I don't believe in hell because the Bible doesn't talk about hell. The Old Testament. No, just kidding. The Old Testament doesn't talk about it. The Old Testament is extremely neutral about what happens after death. Death is a good thing. It's something that happens to every person. It's natural. That's sort of the extent to which hell is talked about in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, you don't find the word hell, you find the word Hades, and you find the word that's flying out of my brain right now.
Gehenna?
Gehenna.
Yeah.
You got it. It's 8:16 p.m. here in Scotland. That's about the time my brain shuts off. Yeah, Gehenna. So it's a valley that is associated with child sacrifice and associated with foreign kings and idol worship. And so it is just this judgment, apocalyptic language that was never supposed to be taken literally. It's just the way that Jesus likes to make people aware that if they weaponize religion, they're gonna have consequences for that. And so it's often rich people, it's often religious people who he condemns to hell, which I think or to Gehenna rather, which I think is important for us to realize. It's not the people who are like sinning so bad that they earn a place in Gehenna. No, it's like these people who are a part of oppressive systems. And it's not something that happens after death. Hell, or how we think of it, is a lie. It's a story that's made up so that we can ignore the hells that we're creating here on Earth through supporting oppressive systems. So it's myth, it's storytelling. Jesus was a fantastic storyteller. If he was nothing else, he was a fantastic storyteller. He's drawing on shared imagery, shared metaphors, and it's not something that's meant to be taken literally. And so, yeah, I really recommend Hellbent by Brian Recker if you want more on this. It's a very good book. And hell is certainly not my expertise.
Yeah.
So that I'm more in the gender and sexuality world. But if you want more information on what the hell is going on with hell, then Brian Recker's book is really great. But here's a hint, okay? So even if you read Brian's book, which you should absolutely do, even if you still believe in hell, you're like, okay, I have to believe in hell. Weird take, that's fine. But my buddy Paul, love him. He's just misunderstood, okay? He's just misunderstood. He says that your partner is saved through your faith. So it doesn't matter.
He does. Where does he say that?
Yeah, 1 Corinthians 7:14 says, "For the unbelieving husband has been sanctified through his wife, and the unbelieving wife has been sanctified through her believing husband." So there you go.
Yeah. So that takes away a lot of the stress there.
Yeah, and a lot of the people point to the unequally yoked passages. That's not talking about marriage. It's talking about Christian communities. It's talking about some of your Christian community is idol worshiping or whatever, and you're not. So that's not even talking about marriage. But the only passage where Paul does actually talk about interfaith relationships, probably one of the only places in the Bible that talks about interfaith relationships, the husband is saved through the wife.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah,
I solved all your problems.
I loved that you pointed out the apocalyptic language, because I feel like the first time that I ever started to really look into the history of the Bible, and yeah, I'm surface level over here. I'm no biblical scholar, but that blew my mind, because I was always taught to take the Bible so literally, and I thought that Revelation was a play-by-play handbook of what was going to happen here on Earth.
Yeah.
So can you explain a little bit, like, just what apocalyptic language was?
Yeah. So around the time that Jesus was living, there was a sort of genre called like apocalyptic genre. And it was just like this fun genre where people used language to apocalyptic imagery language. So dragons and fire and brimstone and lambs and seals and horses and all of that sort of, like a lot of the stuff that you see in Revelation. And they use that imagery a lot of times to critique a certain thing that's going around them in the world. Or to, so it's similar to, like movies or TV. Like, I mean, think about like the horror genre. Often, like, you don't watch Dracula or Frankenstein thinking like this is actually something that's happened, but it is trying to communicate a certain fear or worry or anxiety that the general public has. So, like for Dracula, it's like when it was written, the fear was around like colonialism and decolonialism. And so you have this foreign vampire coming in and changing the people into him. And so it's communicating something. It's talking about something, but you're not supposed to take it literally. Think about Animal Farm, George Orwell. Yeah. That sort of imagery where it's like, no, like these pigs weren't actually talking. That's not the point. And so I think if we were to sit down with whoever the author of Revelation was and say like, okay, unpack the dragon for me, like he'd be like, what are you talking about?
Because what were you trying to say here?
Yeah. A lot of people also think that Revelation is super misunderstood as well. And a lot of people actually think that like part of the reason why it was written in such rich apocalyptic language was because the author was being persecuted for being a Jewish Christian. And he was critiquing the empire. So all of it is empire criticism. And he was using that language to communicate to the people who peddled in that sort of genre, who would know what he was trying to communicate. But he did it in such a way that it would be discreet. It would be, a way to communicate critique of the empire without garnering a lot of attention from that. So yeah, apocalyptic imagery is all throughout the New Testament. It's very popular Jewish genre, and it was never not even to the writers. I think Paul was an apocalyptic Jew as well. Like, nobody's expecting you to take it literally. But they're talking in these terms to, again, going back to the fiction conversation, like, just because something's not literally true doesn't mean that it doesn't communicate truth. And they're trying to communicate truth. They're not even like the gospel writers who, you sort of picture like the disciples like following Jesus around with a pen and paper, like, oh, he just said that? Whoa. That's
word for word.
Yeah. The gospels were written hundreds of years after Jesus was born, likely, like 50 to 100 years after he was living. And so, but the writers they don't care about like historicity and accuracy like we do. They're having fun with it. They're writing a story, and they're very aware of that, and the original audience would have been very aware of that as well.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because I just think I don't know where it comes from, but the fact that in today's day and age, people truly believe that every single thing is very literal. I mean, that's what I was taught. Every single thing in the Bible happened. It's accurate. And if there's no historical basis for it, then you just need to have faith that there is.
But it's so interesting because even like literalists, if you just start talking to them for a little bit and start asking questions, then you realize very quickly that they don't actually take all of the Bible literally. It's just the parts where, like, conveniently, the men get to be in power. And then you start to ask, well, the Bible says this. Like, why aren't you taking this literally? And they don't have a good answer for that. And
yeah, like all of the rules in the Old Testament.
Exactly. And there are even things in the New Testament that, like, often people are like, well, New Covenant, I don't care about the Old Testament. Like, there's a lot of things in the New Testament that we don't take literally either, and I don't think we should. And so, yeah, the literalist movement is just not as literal as they might think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you said you're not the expert on the hell talk, but your main thing is gender and sexuality.
Yeah.
So what really drew you to studying that aspect?
Yeah. Well, part of it is I came to terms with my own sexuality through deconstruction. A part of deconstructing religion for me was just deconstructing heteronormativity, and started to understand some of my feelings and perspectives of the world. And so I realized that I was bisexual. And so you look back on, like, why did I care about that so much? A lot of, like, really good allies, like, turned out to be gay. And that was sort of my experience as well. I read every single book that was available back when I was growing up, like, that wasn't as much of a topic of conversation as it is now. Like, I remember being sort of like one of the only people that I knew that was, like, asking these questions and reading these books. And so I read every book that I could in, like, middle school, high school. I knew every Bible verse, had it memorized, clobber verse, everything. Like, I knew it, and I thought about it so much. And then I got to college and started living with girls, and I was like, maybe there's a reason why I care about this so much. And so that's really what drew me to gender and sexuality. But then, like, also, the Bible's about a lot of things, but one of the main things it's about is sex. Like, there's so much sex in the Bible, and there's so much gender. Like, I mean, just because it's a very human text, and that's what I really actually enjoy about the Bible is how human it is. And it is such an art, people talk about like the Bible is timeless. Like, no, it's not. It's such an artifact of its time. And it's a historical work of historical scholarship that you have to do in order to read it correctly. And sorry, maybe not correctly, but just to read it academically.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I was really interested in that, and I was also really interested. So, I'm a mom, and my daughter was 5 months old when I started grad school, and I was breastfeeding at the time, and I was taking a class on Paul, and Paul actually in 1 Thessalonians 2 describes himself as a nursing mother, and I just remember as a breastfeeding mother being so fascinated by the fact that a man in the ancient world would compare himself to a nursing mother. And I started to ask, like, what are the implications of that for his masculinity? And how would his audience have taken that for his masculinity? And so I became really fascinated by what were the gender norms of the time and how were biblical authors or characters or relationships either conforming to those norms or breaking them. And I found that through that work, I found that not only do I not think that the Bible doesn't condemn queerness, I think it actually celebrates queerness. A lot of the Bible's heroes are queer. And it's so yeah, like you just start to realize how sacred and holy it is to be queer and to exist in a queer body. And so those were the sorts of questions that drove my interest and still like get me up in the morning, like, and make me excited to write this 50-page chapter that I'm currently working on for my dissertation.
Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh. Well, what was one of the things that you found most surprising or that you've been learning as you go throughout the gender studies?
No one's ever asked me this. I think I just keep being surprised by by how much God loves queer bodies. And I don't know, I just think that there are a lot of people that the more they study the Bible, the further it takes them away from God. And I've actually found that the more that I study the Bible, the closer it takes me to God. When I let the Bible be what it is, when I'm honest about what the Bible is, and when I feel like I can really believe and trust that the Bible is incarnate, fully human and fully divine, which means that sometimes we have to sort through all the human shit to see the divine. But I think it's kind of beautiful that all the human shit is still there. I mean, yeah, it's frustrating, especially on days where I just am like, I would like one woman's voice. I would like for one book to be written by a woman.
Totally.
But yeah, I think that what I find surprising by it is just like, it's just so like weaponized and it's so like a queer person thinks that they're going to go to the Bible and like not find any sort of representation, but it's just right there. It's right there in the prophets. All the prophets are queer as fuck. You look at the Ethiopian eunuch, you look at Paul, like all these main characters who
Can you explain that a little bit? Because I bet a bunch of people probably don't understand, know?
Yeah. So basically, my work is to establish. So what my definition of queer here is anything that doesn't fit within the heteronormative model. So that could mean what queer doesn't mean is I think that these people are having sex with other people. Like, I'm not thinking sex has nothing to do with queerness. If you ask a queer person, if you talk to them, a lot of their queerness has nothing to do with their sexuality. It has more to do with the way that they navigate the world outside of heteronormative standards. So my work as like a historical Bible scholar is I establish in that given time, what are the heteronormative standards? So in Moses' case, in the ancient Near East, what are the heteronormative standards? And we can do that by looking at other textual evidence, and text being written text, images, archaeology, that sort of thing. So we look at other evidence and we discover, like, okay, this is what one might assume a prophet would look like and act like. And then you start to map those norms onto a character in the Bible, and you see how they align with those norms or how they rub up against those norms. And so that's basically a queer hermeneutic. And so you can do the same with every character or relationship in the Bible. You can sort of roughly sketch out what are the expectations here, what are the norms here, and how are these characters stretching or defying or completely fitting into those norms and standards. And the more work you do like that, the more you're going to discover that a lot of the characters who are the most holy, the ones who are called out by God, do not map well onto those heteronormative standards. So you can think about Moses with his stutter. So he's at the burning bush. He's unable to speak. He says, like, God, like, I can't do this because I have a stutter. A lot of disability Bible scholars have noticed that it was likely a disability that Moses was dealing with in that case, or seen as a disability in the ancient world.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is not what you expect out of a prophet who is supposed to speak against the Pharaoh and bring out a whole group of people from a nation to deliver them. And so that's a sort of example of what you would see with like queerness. That would be like a check for queerness there. Another example is probably the most famous example, which is the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts 8. Eunuchs, we have lots of evidence that eunuchs were seen as gender nonconforming, that they were seen as monstrous. That's a direct quote. That they were seen as neither man nor woman. Again, a direct quote from an ancient text. And there were eunuchs who, and Jesus actually talks about this, there were eunuchs who chose to be eunuchs, which would have been interesting. There are a lot of decisions that could go into why someone chose to be a eunuch. And there are people who didn't choose that, so they would be like products of slavery or other things like that. And then there are people who didn't choose, who were born eunuchs. And so those would have been intersex people, likely. And so on that spectrum, you see people who chose to go through some sort of surgical alteration to their body to make sure that they no longer aligned with either gender. And there were people who were born intersex. And so already you have all of these categories of gender queerness. And in Acts 8, you have the Ethiopian eunuch, and Ethiopia was seen as a very effeminate country because of their skin. Their very dark black skin would have been seen as effeminate, but then also they had a queen. So their country was seen as effeminate because they followed a woman. And so it's not just a eunuch, it's an Ethiopian eunuch. So it's like this pansy eunuch, this foreign eunuch. And so that's actually like one of the first Gentile convert that we have in the Bible, is this eunuch who is reading Isaiah and understands that it, is testifying to the Messiah, and he pulls his buggy on the side of the road and gets baptized then and there. And so, yeah, like the more work that you do around that, the more you start to see, like, not only does the Bible not condemn queerness, but it like actually celebrates it. And some of the most important characters in scripture were queer and would have been seen as queer. And God can use queer bodies for his ministry and his desire and his will. So that's sort of an example of the sort of work that I do as a Bible scholar specializing in gender and sexuality.
So what are you working on now? So you're in school, right?
Yeah. So I'm in Paul. So that generally gets mixed reviews whenever I tell people that. But I'm specifically looking at masculinity. So I'm looking at how Paul thinks about masculinity, and I'm trying to see what Paul's ideal man is. And the way that I'm doing that is using like some different like sociological methods that help me isolate and understand what ideal masculinity is for a particular person in a particular text. But basically, what I'm finding is that Paul's ideal man was obedient and humble, and all of these things that are completely opposite of what the Greco-Roman world would have expected from an ideal man. But I think that Paul has a different model than the Greco-Roman world has. I think he's looking at the crucified Messiah as his idea of the ideal man. And so that's the sort of work I'm doing. I'm in Romans specifically. So Paul's big fat letter, as I like to call it. And yeah, I'm just looking at the ways that Paul talks about what it means to be a man, and what that means for like how he prescribed masculinity, like how to act as a man as well. Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
That's so interesting. Well,
Thanks.
What made you want to start to share on TikTok? Because I feel like you just started posting and like it's really taken off.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think one of the main reasons was I'm really passionate about accessibility of scholarship. I grew up sort of in the ivory tower world. My dad is a professor. I'm very familiar with how academia works and the ins and outs of that. And something I've noticed my entire life is just the massive gap between academia and just lay people. And so that's something I've actually always wanted to do, is teach to popular audiences, write to popular audiences. Like, it's crazy. You read one journal article and they all cite each other. Like, they're all just like talking to each other in this echo chamber. And that's not something that I'm interested in doing. And then the other reason is representation. You know, I love the other Bible scholars who are on TikTok and Instagram, but they're all old white men. And I was tired of just seeing old white men. I wanted to see people who looked like me, who are, like irreverent and silly and young and don't, I don't take myself too seriously. And I think representation was a huge thing that I didn't grow up with. I didn't grow up with seeing the sort of Bible scholar that I am. And so I wanted to be that for other people. I wanted to show people that not just with biblical scholarship, but also just Christianity in general. Like when you grow up in a Southern Baptist church, you're taught that you're the only right kind of Christian, and everyone else is like the lukewarm Christian, and everyone else is going to go to hell. And so I didn't know that other types of Christianity existed. Like, I didn't think that there was another option. Like, for me, I was like, okay, either, like, I believe this very specific form of Christianity or nothing, or I believe in nothing. And I wish that I had, I did have some, like Rachel Held Evans, like her voice was like huge for me. Those sorts of people that were like, okay, there's some world out there, past where I can see. And I wanted to be that for other people that, can look and see the sort of faith that I have, whatever it is, and that I'm still asking questions and still struggling and still, I never with my content want to make it seem like I've got it figured out. I always want it to seem like I'm still learning, even with my scholarship. Like, I'm always still learning. I'm always still pivoting and deconstructing. And so like, I just wanted it to be a space where other people could see a different option, both for biblical scholarship, but then also just spirituality in general.
No, that's so good because a lot of people have written me and they've told me that they still feel warmth towards Jesus and God, but they also feel like they either have to reject everything or buy into this thing that very much doesn't feel right to them. So I love with deconstruction and just, it's nice, your voice and some of the other voices out there that we're able to ask ourselves for ourselves and actually think for ourselves for the first time, what do I actually believe? And it's okay if we all end up on different pages, like it doesn't have to just be one thing, which is unfortunately what I think most of us were taught is that it has to look like this one very specific thing.
Right. And I get those same sorts of DMs, and my goal is never to like keep them being a Christian. Yeah. Like, I'm not trying to convince you to still be a Christian. Like, go do whatever you want. Like, genuinely, whatever helps you understand the world and whatever helps you love your neighbor better, like, I'm for that. And, but my content is very much for the people who, despite everything, like, we still like Jesus and we still care about the Bible. And that can be really infuriating because I think genuinely most days, I think it would be easier if I just left everything behind and just wrote it all off and stopped fighting for it. And if I, just let the Christian nationalists have the Bible, let the Christian nationalists have the word Christian, and just move on with my life. And a lot of people find a lot of freedom and empowerment in doing just that, but it's not possible for me. And it's not yet, at least, like, at least where I'm sitting right now in this time and place doesn't feel possible. And so I think it's funny because even when I have crises of faith, which is, every day. And I'll like talk to my husband about it. Like, maybe I should just be an atheist. Like, maybe I should just let this all go and join you on your side of things. And he's always like, you can't do that. And he's just like,
He knows you.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, that you can't just give it all up and be an atheist. Otherwise, like, you wouldn't be you. And I think that's true for a lot of us who are hanging on tooth and nail, because we see the goodness that it has. We see what it was originally supposed to be and what it was supposed to do and how it's been warped and weaponized and all that bullshit. But yeah, we're out there.
Yeah.
We're out here.
Well, what are some of the books that you would recommend for people if they're wanting to just start looking into things for the first time?
Rachel Held Evans. If you haven't read her, read everything that she's ever written. Searching for Sunday, Inspired, all of those, I mean, like the holy grails of progressive Christianity. I would also, so those were like instrumental for me. Shameless by Nadia Bolz-Weber is one of my favorites for purity culture and specifically. Also, like, the thing with progressive Christianity that I wish more people realized is that it's not new. That actually what we're saying now is what Black and brown Christians have been saying for a really long time. And so I'd really appreciate, I would really encourage you to look into liberation theology, look into James Cone, look into Gaffney, those sorts of Gutierrez, like those sorts of voices that are so foundational for, bell hooks. Like I could go on and on for liberation theology and understanding Maya Angelou. And so that's where I'd really start, honestly, because they're the ones who like said it before it was cool. And we are basically just like recycling what they've already said over and over again. My favorite devotional, which I get a lot of questions about devotionals, which I hate devotionals. So I don't read the Bible for fun. I read it for homework. But my favorite devotional is God Didn't Make Us to Hate Us by Reverend Lizzie. So freaking good. I absolutely recommend that. As far as like an embodied spirituality, I feel like a lot of the problem with evangelical Christians is that they have such a disembodied perspective of what it means to be a believer. And so The Sacred Art of Slowing Down by Anna Christine Seipel is fantastic for that. She talks about just sort of the importance of grounding your beliefs in your body. She's a therapist, and so just sort of has that language that just really resonates with science and is just fantastic. And fiction.
Yes.
Please read fiction. Read John Steinbeck. Read literally whatever you want. R.F. Kuang,
literally anything.
Literally anything. I'm just begging you to read a book. Like,
no, it's life-changing. Like, it quite literally changed my life when I started to really read books again.
Yeah, I'm like, please do it. Audiobooks count. Don't let anyone tell you that audiobooks don't count. Oh, like Jesus and John Wayne is a fantastic one.
I'm currently reading that one.
Oh, man.
Because so many people have told me to read it. So.
Yeah, it's really important. It's like one of the most important books written in this decade, I think. And so fantastic one. The Making of Biblical Womanhood by Beth Allison Barr is fantastic as well. For just like an understanding of what's going on in the world, of just like what is going, like they help ground it in like historical data of like, this is why this is happening. Like read books by people who don't believe the same thing as you, who don't look like you, who don't live in the same place as you. Like, that's gonna change everything.
Absolutely. I feel like that's the biggest thing, because growing up in these systems, they tell you to not be persuade or like to be moved by the world,
Yeah,
you know?
right.
So
Exactly.
don't let the world change you. So everything feels so off limits. So I feel like even just as an act of rebellion to read something different, like I think it was Brian Recker. He posted something on his story about how somebody said that they felt so guilty and so much anxiety by just even buying his book, you know? And it's like, just do it for the sake of letting yourself do that.
Yeah.
Like you have autonomy to go down these different routes. And if it's the truth or if it rings true to you, it still will at the end of the day. But there's nothing wrong with looking into things a little bit more.
And I would say, like, even if you're not a huge reader, like if you know, if you're not a huge reader, like film and music is a great way to do that too. Like watch a movie by a director that doesn't live where you live. Watch a movie about someone who experiences something different than you. Watch a documentary. Just consume art from I think if you're looking for God, look at the art. That's where he is. And so, listen to Bad Bunny, just
love.
That's where you're going to find God, and that's where you're going to find other people. And so, I think there's more options than reading books too. Just consume art. It's what makes you human.
Absolutely. Well, where can people find you?
You can find me on TikTok and Instagram. That's where I'm the most annoying. Mattie Mae Motl on everything. Just my name. I'm on Substack too, also Mattie Mae Motl. And you can just find me lurking.
Love it. Yeah, well, I'll make sure to put everything in the show notes so that people can find you. But thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was truly so fun.
Yay! Awesome. Well, if you guys could please leave a positive review for Healedish, that would mean the world to me. And like I said, I have a second podcast called The Overshare Hour with my best friend, Mackenzie. So please go check it out. It's a lot of fun. And I will see you guys next week for another episode of Healedish. Bye.